For this presentation, we would like to focus on IP process management. To be more precise, to explain core processes involved in IP management. On the top left here, we have a first step involving IP strategy development, which consists of identifying IP-related goals and then ways to implement them to derive measures from the business model and the business strategy. In the example of the car park that we just heard about, this could be a differentiation approach by the business, which could be supported by identifying and protecting the USPs of the business model for the new modified car park system. This is to secure exclusivity and support the bundle of arguments that constitute the novel product or process, in this case, for example, the individualized parking experience. And this then could be communicated as a unique marketing position to the customer. Having developed this IP strategy, the next step would be thinking about how to generate different IPR rights. The next step would be IP administration, which is about providing an overview of the IP and ensuring that the legal status and other aspects are monitored appropriately. IP enforcement here is when you have an IP portfolio with enforceable rights that you can use to attack infringers and then secure exclusivity. Now turning to the bottom left here, once a portfolio has been built, IP-related defenses can be considered. So this would be if a third party uses their IP to attack our company, our business, we would be able to not only support dealing with this issue, but also striking back with the portfolio that we have defined, if it applies to the other competitor. IP reporting, finally, is the attempt to make transparent how resources are allocated, how the costs are generated and accounted for, so that the business is always informed about the status of the IP work and the implementation. Now we would like to deep dive into a specific process and show how it is done step by step. On the top left here, it is defined that once a year a maintenance decision, let's say session, has to be done, which is to evaluate the IP portfolio, and then we align it to the strategy that has been defined. Also then make changes if the strategy has changed over time. So when the IP portfolio is there, it would be the job of the IP admin here, having on this side always the people constituting an effect on the process step to be undertaken. It would be the IP admin's job to update relevant information, and then it would be the IP admin's job to carry out the evaluation. So to say, to prepare everything that should be ready for the session, and then report patents to be dropped to the product management. The product manager should provide his business insight and give an opinion if this aspect that is protected by a specific individual right, maybe a patent valid now in several countries, is still contributing to secure exclusivity for the business model, and if not, then this could be a candidate for a dropping decision, which would save a lot of money. The IP manager is then to create the decision template, bringing together all these information regarding business and regarding also legal aspects such as status, the chances for grant, and the scope. This can then be evaluated in more detail and discussed in a steering committee containing both the legal and the business side. Once a decision has been made, it can be that a patent should be maintained, which just results in an update in so-called database and setting a new deadline for review. This can be done by the IP admin and the fees that come with maintaining the IPRs are then paid accordingly. Another outcome could be that a patent family should be restricted in the sense that some countries, for example, are dropped, so that the territorial scope of a patent family is reduced, for example, because it didn't play out to go into a certain market or other reasons. Then again, this status for the patent family would be updated and maintenance fees would be paid. Last but not least, the patent should be dropped completely, meaning that at this point of time there is either no further business potential for using this IP, or from the legal side, for example, validity is challenged. So then a deadline for review would be set by the IP admin, and for this patent family, the process would be over and would be dropped completely.
Now we will go here through two specific examples of sub-processes as it had been described earlier, and this slide will show you how through this sub-process there will be some elements will be brought into the process and as inputs, and which will give through the steps taken some effects which will lead you from, let's say here for patents, from the business model that you are entitled to protect, to secure the most you can, to a concrete result of your IP generation, which is the creation of an IP right. So as you may recognize here, the identification of the business model elements will be done starting from your business model description. And through this first step, you will be able to define the IP requirements that needs to be fulfilled. Then, now that you know what are your IP requirements, and here again I'm talking about patent, so you will be able to get disclosures of invention provided by the research, by the R&D in general, or by people involved in the innovation generally, and you will be able to get the invention disclosure processed, which will be realized through a formal invention disclosure. In other words, a kind of document that will, for the first time, start to design your invention and how this invention may be protected then after. Once you have this invention disclosure, you will be able to describe the innovation and have a back and forth process in order to detect the relevant feature for the customers. This will give you the possibility to check out whether these inventions you have been identifying fit with the goal of your IP. So as a second example here, let's talk about trademarks, and you may see that here again we will go through 4 main steps, which consist in identifying the core element of communication, consisting in defining the IP requirements, starting from the marketing materials that had been created, stemming within the company. And once these IP requirements are defined, from the input of the communication elements that is brought to the IP department, shaping of elements to protectability will be done. This means that there will be an interaction between the IP and the marketing in order to define whether and to guide the company on the possibility to protect by trademark, yes or no, certain element of communication provided to the IP. And this will generate a source of IP protection. Then after, starting from that, you will have to take decisions on whether it has to, this IP, potential IP rights have to be protected or not, and it will lead to the preparation of trademarks. So again, here you will have some application documents for trademarks stemming, which are starting from the marketing materials provided.
Here, in this slide, we will see who is working on the in-process management. First of all, we see the process manager. The process manager will be the CTO in the corporation, and then their task is they will show you the big picture of the IP management process, and then so all the participants in the process, they will know about what is the IP process of landscape, and also he is responsibility for the documentation as well. And then the next step is the next person is the process owner. He will be head of the IP department in corporation. He is in charge of the whole process of the evaluation, and then also how to improve their process. And also he has the kind of responsibility for the monitoring and auditing of the process as well. And then process leader, he will be in IP manager in corporation, and then he is in charge of what is the actual execution of the IP management process. And then basically he's guiding and supporting the IP process management, and then he's also in charge of the training. Process user is the kind of active the process. Process users will be IP manager and also the administrators, also the service provider from outside as well. And then they are carrying out the IP management. Their task is directly assigned to their single process.
Finalizing, I will present you the interaction between two core processes, namely the innovation process and the IP management process. As usual, these processes are having interfaces, and as usual, those interfaces are having a specification, input, and feedback, but probably one of the characteristics of this process is that the interface is not only changing in the content as normal, but also in the scope, changing case by case. Now, going deeper, we see here in the innovation process going from the idea generation to the product planning, development, prototyping, and production and marketing. And on the other hand, we can see some I would say highlights from the generation of IP that we have seen already 2 or 3 slides before. And I want now to tell you how they are interacting as example. Depending on the branch and company, the capture of the ideas could start through the innovation process or through the IP management process. At the end of the day, and we have seen already that also in the 2 slides before, in the maintenance process, we will take a decision about this idea. It doesn't matter if the decision is taken in the innovation process or in the IP-related process, but anyway, the idea will be somehow selected and put as candidate for innovation. Then started the first task, or actually the second task, depending on the kind of process, after the idea of the selection, and it is how IP provide information and recommendations for the idea evaluation. And normally the information used in this part is provided from monitoring through landscape analysis, portfolio analysis, white space analysis, investment in R&D. All this information and recommendations should be provided to the innovation process for the first analysis. Now, the next phase, development, the product design, that is not only a follow-up activity of the definition of a strategy, but in this phase we will concretize more a part of this strategy, and namely the way how we can support our business model, probably creating some selling points and trying to give the product exclusivity. It could be through the technical features relevant for the customer, and of course through the identification of these features we would generate IP rights, and also in the same way identification from design features, also to the generation of the non-technical IP, and also about shapes, look and feel, and so on. And here probably thinking about marks and trademarks and brand name. And then during the production and market launch, the IP will support with the freedom to operate analysis and continuing observing the prior art there. Okay, and thank you very much. We finished with that.